Welcome back to 651 Customs. In this episode, we're going to rebuild the transfer case in the Jeep. We're going to get this thing finished, probably do some exhaust work, and get this thing back on the road. I'm really excited to see how that exhaust sounds. I'm going to do dual pipes out of this thing. That's one of the only things I've got left, that and the transfer case, and it'll be done. So let's get to it. Alright, even though it was really tight in there, I did manage to get all of the bolts out. The one on this side on the top was the most difficult, but I went through the shifter hole and I was able to get it. So I'm going to go ahead and heave this thing down from here, and then I'll get my camera set up and we'll do a rebuild. Alright, hope the camera's set up good enough here. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've never been into one of these, so I'm just going to start undoing things until something comes apart. Okay, got it all tore down. Took about an hour. I wasn't sure how to take it apart, but it's pretty simple. A couple snap rings here and there. I've got to take the bearings out of the case and all that because I've got all new. I think I've got new everything, but I got to check. And I've got the new SYE kit, of course. So that was the main reason for doing this. I'm going to go ahead and study up on exactly how this thing gets assembled, because I kind of understand the concept, but knowing exactly where everything goes is pretty important. So I'm going to go get studied up on this really quick, and then I will start the assembly process. Alright, I've got the case halves draining. And right here, let's see, it's on the other side. There we go. There's a bearing in there. I can't pull it with the tools I've got, so I had to order the tool on Amazon, and it'll be here in a couple days. So we're gonna take a break on the transfer case, and I'm gonna move on to something else. I need to get the cooling fan situated and wire up some relays. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that. Alright, I've decided to make a fan shroud. Down here, I've got to cover this area of the radiator with a plate of steel, and then I'm going to put this fan down in there. This is a 12-inch fan, I think. Yes, a 12-inch fan, so I'll just put that down on the radiator like that, somewhere in there. And in order to make a shroud, I'm just going to use this flat piece of metal I just cut out, piece of scrap metal. The radiator is roughly 12 inches tall. That's what I've cut this metal out for. So, get that lined up. I should be able to mount it on there, something like that. Maybe center it better. Somewhere in there like that. I'll mount that on there with some bolts or something. I've got some of those nut things. I've got rib nuts. I may use rib nuts. That'll be cool. I haven't used them yet, but I've got a big kit. The reason I'm doing a flat plate is because this lip here, it goes back like an inch to the radiator, so there'll be a gap in there no matter what I do. And if you can see down at the bottom, I'm going to turn the light on. Down at the bottom, I've got these tabs right there. So if I make some tabs sticking out on the shroud, I can just stick it down in there, bend it over on that side and that side, and then all I've got to do is use the holes that are already here, which that one there it is. So that one's got the little, that's got the nut thing on it. So I'm going to use the factory bolts I've got here that hold the shroud. I'll just bolt it on, slip my tabs in, bend them over, maybe not even bend them, just slip them in. I might have to bend the edge of that back a little bit so it goes up against it. Spilling paint right there. But yeah, I'll get my shroud. It'll be roughly an inch, 3/4 of an inch or so off the radiator, whatever the distance, like about an inch there. So yeah, so the shroud's going to be about an inch off the radiator, so that should be plenty of room. This factory one over here, there's much more room between the fan and the radiator, but that's a higher flow fan, so hopefully this will work out. I'm really betting on the electric cooling because it would take a lot of fabrication work to make a fan shroud to fit the factory fan for this, and if I can just make the electric system work, then that'll be a lot easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and trace this thing out where I want it, cut my tabs on the bottom that stick down, cut my hole out for the fan, get it mounted on there somehow, and not going to bother recording it because it's just kind of a whole bunch of grinding, cutting, and stuff like that. So I'll be back when I've got something done. Alright, this video is kind of all over the place. I went ahead and got the sway bar mounts put on the frame there so I can disconnect them, get them out of the way when I'm wheeling or whatever. So that's done. Alright, I'm adding in some circuits, just one for the fan really, but while I'm at it, I decided I might as well add in some more circuits to this fuse box. What I've discovered is underneath this fuse box you have this plate which sends power to everything basically, and you've got like 6 of these tabs sticking up that don't have a fuse, and they also didn't have any of the flat connector things in there. So I took apart another, had an old Ford fuse box I took apart, and inside there were these, which have one right here. That is the thing that I'm adding in there. So this allows the this thing connects to the tabs here like that, and then you stick a fuse in from the top side and it'll go into the top of the little connector. So the fuse box was missing those connectors because the factory only put in what the Jeep only put in enough for the Jeep circuits that it does have. So I added a bunch of extra ones in there, and what that is going to allow me to do is to put a bunch of these fat fuses in there. The only issue with that is these are a little wider than what I have connectors for, but I can make it work. But this will allow me to put in these fat fuses, and I can run 6 extra circuits off that just out of this box, so that'll be handy. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing stuck back in there, and then I think I'm gonna run that fan off a 30 amp because I believe the factory fan over there, I believe it's also a 30 amp, so I'm gonna run this one on a 30 amp fuse as well. I think that's what it's supposed to be rated for. Not actually not sure about the factory. I'm not sure about the factory fan. It might be a different rating, but I know that the aftermarket fan I've got is a 30 amp rating. So, oh, and another thing I did, this fuse box in particular only had a plug for 4 holes for this relay location. So I went ahead and just punched a hole right there in the middle, and that allowed me to put a regular 5-pin relay in it. So if I turn it the right way, there we go. Yeah, so that allows me to put a regular relay in there, and then all I've got to do on the back side is stick some bare spade connectors in the back of that, stab them right in, put some spade connectors in here for the fuses, the extra fuses I'm going to be running, which is just the one for that fan. And if I ever do lights or anything, I'll have spare fuses to run those off of as well, so that'll be handy. And I've got extra relay locations I could use for lights or whatever as well, with these extra holes here. So this, as you can see, this was labeled as an ABS pump and ABS system, but my Jeep doesn't have ABS, so this fuse here wasn't punched out in the center, so I just went ahead and punched it out, and now we're good to go. I was going to run some extra mini fuses, but I didn't have the right connector, and it just wasn't going to be as easy as just throwing some big ones in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this fan wired up and out of the way. Here is the shroud I made. I don't think I showed that yet. It's kind of doesn't completely cover. You can see a gap over here on this side, and then here at the top it's got a small gap in there, but for the most part the fan is in there. So just got to run my wires, and I'm going to get that done now. Alright, I got some good news here. I just found the harness that I ripped all those connector or fuse. I just found the harness that I ripped all the fuses out of with that fuse panel, and I've got these connectors here that are already attached to wires. So if I use those, all I've got to do is just use butt splices. So I'm gonna stick a couple of these in here, probably just leave them hanging out there. And then that way, later on, if I add more stuff, I've already got the fuses ready to go. So I'm going to do that real quick. Alright, back out here this morning. I finally got this toolkit. This is a, there we go. This is a, wow, it's all mixed up. A blind hole puller kit. So with this I should be able to pull that bearing out. Okay, there we go. So this is the blind hole puller kit, blind man puller kit. So this will be good. I should be able to get that bearing out. I'm hoping I can also use this for pilot bearings as well. So that'll be good. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This is not a how-to video, so I'm not gonna say, hey, you do it this way or do it that way. There's a lot of videos on how to rebuild a 235 transfer case, so I'm just going to go through and do this, get it done, and probably time-lapse what I can. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to see what I can figure out here. Okay, there it is. The transfer case is done. Got the sway on it. Got the all new seals, all new bearings, all that stuff. I've got to fix this. This is going to be an issue. So I broke that off somehow. Honestly, it looks like it had been cracked for a while. But I've got to get that out, and I'm going to see if I can tap it and put a MPT bung or something like that in there. And then that'll be it for the transfer case. I got to get that done, then I'll lift this thing up in there and see if I can slap it back in. Alright, a little update here. I got the breather tube on there. I had to tapped that for, I think it was 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch MPT. Yeah. So I tapped that for 1/8 inch MPT. And then I got this Dorman 1/8 inch MPT 5/16 fuel line fitting, 90 degrees. Threaded that in there. I had to make sure I didn't tap it too far in because that hole is larger than what the hole size is supposed to be for an 1/8 inch tap. So you have to make sure you don't go too far with the tap, and then you also have to use, which you can see the Teflon tape on there. I used the fuel resistant tape, and then I tightened it in. When I tightened it in, you can see the mark it made on the aluminum there. You could probably grind a little bit there or just use a different 90, but I was able to tighten it in enough to get it nice and snug, and it feels solid, doesn't feel like it's going to come out. So the breather hose is done. I'm going to go ahead and heave this thing back up into place. Okay, I went ahead and got the transfer case all bolted back up. Didn't bother filming it because it was just a lot of tedious stuff, just getting those bolts tightened. And I took it out. I put it in the way I took it out, so I put the drive shaft on it. Like I had it hanging sideways, put the drive shaft on it. I slid the drive shaft transfer case in at one time, and then held this bad boy up and basically bench pressed it up into place. I don't know how much it weighs, but I can bench press that much. All the bolts tightened. I did not drop the cross member. I stuck a wrench in the hole for the shifter up top, and I was able to like come down and tighten all the bolts or the nuts. On this side, I've got to finish tightening that linkage for the shifter. I lost the nuts for it, so I found two other nuts, and now I just making it work with what I got, because I don't know where the original hardware went. So I'm gonna get that tightened down, and then we'll get the drive shaft bolted back in. And I'm gonna have to get some bolts to go in the rear drive shaft here. I don't have any hardware for that, which is surprising because I ordered a drive shaft and an SYE kit, and it didn't come with any hardware, which is very strange. You would think they would send some hardware with that, but I guess that's not how it works. So I've got one that's the right size, but it's too short, so I'm going to take it to the hardware store, get some high grade bolts to go in that for the drive shaft. So something else I just thought of while I'm underneath here, I also got a bung for the fuel return. I'm going to add a return into this tank because the 96s didn't have that, so I'm going to add it in because the Ford EFI system uses a return. So I'll pull the thing out of the tank, get rid of that regulator in the tank, use the one on the fuel rail. Right now I've got this cobbled together mess to plug the return, just because I wanted to test it to make sure it ran. So get that done next, probably. I don't know if I'll film it because it's so close to being finished. I just want to get this stuff knocked out and not have to worry about it. And I just saw oil leaking there, but that's from where I put oil on it to assemble it. Which reminds me, I need to fill this thing up with oil. Otherwise, it won't last very long. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing filled with oil, get my front drive shaft connected to the diff, and we'll move on to whatever else is next. Okay, I've got a couple things figured out here. Got the MAF sensor on here. I had to cut down some hoses and stuff, and I ordered a cone filter to go right there. That rubber wears off on you pretty easy. But yeah, so I got some cut down hoses here that were from another intake. The factory one here and here, had to cut this one down, and then I got the MAF, and then I'll get the cone filter that bolts that. So that takes care of intake, and also got the fan wired up. This was a mess. I think I showed the spare fuses I had in there. I added a bunch of spares and a bunch of wire for them. Also added another relay for the auxiliary fan. It's got one for this fan, and now it's got one for this fan here. And down in there is my wiring for it. Just 2 little connectors. I even put it in a loom, so it's all loomed up. Looks like wiring. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you might not think that it's aftermarket. I've got to get this side cleaned up, loomed and taped and all that stuff to hide the mess, and yeah, get all that mess cleaned up, get my tack adapter hidden down in there somewhere, and wait for this cone filter to come in. In the meantime, I think I'm going to fire it up and see if it runs any better with the MAF plugged up. Which has been just kind of hanging out right here for a while, so get that hooked up, and I'm going to see how it runs real quick, and then get this wiring cleaned up. Probably won't film too much more because this thing's about done. All I've got left is the exhaust, so which I'll probably do exhaust in the next video maybe. I might just tie that up myself, just show it when it's done, and move on to the next project, because this thing has been in the shop way too long and I need to get it out and driving. So, oh, and I've got the fuel line, so I probably will record the fuel line as well. So, okay, one more thing here. Some of you may noticed that I had a cone filter type thing on this. Well, I've rerouted it back to factory location. Used one of those crappy little clamps, but holds pretty good on there. So just so you know, that's fixed now. So there you go. Alright, I just let it run for 10 minutes there. I recorded most of the whole thing there. After all the oil burnt off the exhausts wasn't smoking or anything, so pretty decent engine. One thing I did notice, however, is that as soon as I turned on the factory fan, it pulled way too many amps and the engine immediately died. So I'm going to have to replace this fan with another one of these little 12-inch aftermarket ones. I should be able to do it though, because as long as I put a shroud in there the same way I've shrouded this one, it should work. It's kind of unfortunate that it pulls that many amps. I can't run it. I mean, I could if I hold the throttle, but there's no point in I shouldn't have to pull that many amps. It's kind of crazy. So also, when I cut on the heater, when I cut on the blower motor, it also pulled a lot of amps and the idle went down some. So our alternator is working, but for whatever reason, it's just pulling a lot of amps. The engine's just not running right. So once I get this thing running right, though, it shouldn't be an issue. I'm going to have to get that. I'm going to have to get the oxygen sensor installed in the exhaust. Get a proper intake on that, which that'll restrict the flow, but should run a lot better with the O2 sensor. And it also, this is an automatic computer, so it thinks it doesn't know what gear it's in, so I need to trick it into thinking it's in neutral all the time. So I'll have to get I have to hook my wires up for that. I got to figure out which ones exactly go to it, but there's a sensor on the side of the transmissions. This one, I believe, was hooked to a 4R70W or whatever they call them. But anyway, I'll have to figure out exactly which wires it is, and then splice into that harness with a, I think I just need a resistor. Wow, that ignition module got hot. That's it's crazy how warm that thing gets. But anyway, yeah, I'll have to splice in with a resistor to trick the computer into thinking it's in the correct gear, because on the side of the automatic transmissions, it has a little switch, and depending on what gear you put it in, changes which resistance the computer sees. So you just run you just put a resistor between those two wires, and it should trick it into thinking it's in neutral or whatever. So and also another thing I noticed, I put it in, I don't have the rear drive shaft hooked up, so I put it in drive, or I put it in gear, and I didn't get anything on the speed at all. So I think I'm gonna have to install a something. I think it needs like a 5-volt source to power it, if it's anything like the speed sensor or the RPM. If it's anything like the RPM, then I need like a 5-volt source as well to power that, and the Jeep computer would have had that, and it would have gave it the correct signal. But I don't have that in this circumstance, so I may have to rig something up, figure out how that works. So I'm going to do some research into that, make sure I'm hooking up the right things, get the computer tricked into running in neutral or whatever. That way it will run better, because it'll think it's in the right gear. And what else? I don't know. That's all I can think of right off. Alternator did charge, so it's all good. Got some more work to do on the fan situation. Got to get my exhaust figured out, and a couple more things, and we'll be done. Okay, I just got the bolts in for the front here. I had to go to the hardware store and get some, I think it was 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch, something like that. 5/16 by like 24 or something. Cap screw bolts, whatever, hex, inverted hex, I guess you'd call it. But got those tightened down. This is what I'm working with for spline engagement. The splines are probably about yay long, so it should be, yeah, spline should be engaged about that much. I don't know if that's enough or not, but this drive shaft works for a 6-inch lift on an AX. This drive shaft supposedly works for a 6-inch lift on an AX4, or AW4, I mean. So that would be probably about the same length as a AX15 with a 4.5. So this is a 4.5 to 6-inch lift drive shaft. It doesn't specify auto or manual, so I just kind of ordered it hoping it would work, considering it is supposed to work on a 6-inch. So I think it'll be fine. I'm gonna leave it.
Okay, now that the drive shaft is in, I noticed yesterday when I test fired it, I didn't have a tachometer, or not a tach, but a speedometer. I put it in gear without the drive shaft and let the yoke spin, and I didn't see anything. So I need to look through these wires and figure out which one provides 5 volts to the speed sensor. And then on my computer, there should be a 5-volt source somewhere here, so I'm gonna see if I can just hook it up like that. Otherwise, I'll have to get a 5-volt thing for the to power it. But I'm gonna figure that out, and I'll let you know if it works.
Okay, I had a problem with the speedometer, wasn't working, so I went in here and took the harness apart for no reason. Tried splicing the sense wire, thought it was maybe the signal's not getting there. It had an extra lead on it I didn't need. Could have left that in, but I cut it out and spliced it together right there. So now that's got a splice in it for no reason, which is fine. That's whatever. The real main issue was the fact that I didn't have it grounded. So no ground, no work. And I was able to tie into the 5-volt power off of the computer, for the Ford computer. So that worked out good. This is brown and white, provides 5 volts for sensors and whatnot. So just use that for my speed sensor. I'll probably try and get in here and solder this because I don't like the way that is. I stripped off the wire, or I stripped off the insulation and just wrapped it around it for testing purposes. I was gonna cut it in splice, and I don't want to splice that in particular because that's sensors. That's like something I don't want to lose necessarily. So I'm going to at least try and solder that one. So kind of hypocritical because I did a crap load of just these little connectors and all kinds of stuff. So it'll be fine though. I'll get that properly taped up and whatnot. And yeah, so all I was missing was the ground. And I just twisted the wires together and tied them together for my ground for the speed sensor, and that's also where the RPM ties into. It's under this big mess of wires, so that's where my tachometer ties into as well for the ground. So that worked out pretty good. Glad I got that fixed. So now I'm gonna move on to something else. I got to get this wire cleaned up. I might end the video here because it's kind of getting long. So we'll see. All right, I've been doing some exhaust work here. This is the plan. I was gonna do dual pops, but then I decided it would be much easier to just do a big 3-inch. So I made a Y. You probably noticed that this looks very strange. That's because I've got 2 driver side manifolds because of clearance issues. So I'm running a driver side manifold on the passenger side, and that's got my outlet on the front instead of the back, and that kind of helped with clearance on the firewall and all that stuff because I did not move the engine, or I didn't move the transmission forward or back, so the engine's kind of far back. But yeah, that's what I've got so far. I've got to figure out how to get this end a little bit more round or rounder. I think I'm going to cut a ring off of the end of this 3-inch and then weld it onto this. That way I've got a better, that'll give me a much better place to put a clamp on it. I want to clamp it because the cross member and stuff, this 3-inch is going to run over the cross member, and it'll be hard to get in and out if I don't put some sort of a clamp or something just to hold it together. So I'll cut a piece off the other end so it can slide into this large part here. Get that welded on, slip that on, put a big clamp on it, be done. And then after the cross member, I'll figure out
where the exhaust comes out on the other side of the cross member. I'll figure out the muffler situation from there. Okay, I took the Jeep out of the shop here. I didn't film it because as soon as I fired it up, I noticed a bad vibration when I revved it, mid to high RPM vibration. So it's acting like it's got the wrong flywheel on it, which is really strange. Unless this is a pre-81 engine, but all the accessories and everything on it are 93 part numbers. So I got to figure out which engine I've got here because for whatever reason this thing's got a bad vibration. It could be the balancer on the front and it could be the flywheel on the back. I really hope it's not the flywheel on the back. But I'm going to look into it, do some research. A couple things could cause it: firing order, misfire, something. The fact that it's looking for a transmission that's not there. That's probably one of the first things I'll try is to hook up that resistor in there and see if I can trick the computer into running a little better. And then after that, I'll have to, I don't know, I'll test things and see. Maybe it's just a balancer, maybe it's just computer not running right. Hopefully it's not the flywheel, because that thing's, I've got a lot of things in the way, so it's difficult to change. But hopefully I get it figured out. I'm probably going to end the video here, but I haven't decided yet, so we'll see. Alright, I got my fuel line figured out for the return. I got to put some zip ties in here. This is probably temporary, but unless it works. I had to use a barb thing to a thing and another thing, and back here I've got the 96 fuel thing with the, I moved one of those connection points. So the way this works is these connection points have an O-ring where the wires go through. They have an O-ring. So I drilled a hole in a different location for this one and put it out of the way. Where it's smaller, I had more room to move it. And then I made a big hole where that hole was and put a barbed tank adapter thing. It's not proper for the application, so I'll put silicone all over it. When that dries, it shouldn't leak. So that should work. That's pretty much the fuel system. It's I took out the return that's in the tank and just ran my line straight to my high pressure line straight to it, and then that's pretty much it. This is the regulator that's in the factory tank for 96. You'll notice that this thing has a vacuum port on it, and that may look strange because this regulator is actually just a regular standard regulator you'd have on the engine, but they didn't use the vacuum line. Instead, they just ran their pump on one end and their feed on the other to feed the engine, and it works. But modern cars, everything nowadays has a regulator on the fuel rail or somewhere toward the front. This was a 1 year only thing, and it worked, but I guess not well enough to keep. So, and then the return is there, right there in the tank. It would just drop right back in the tank. So if you ever have a bad regulator in 96, I've heard you can buy a standard regulator, and then you can just shove it down into this thing. It has little snaps where it comes apart, and you can actually rebuild this, take it apart, put a new regulator in it, and you're good to go. So I've never done it, but that's what I've heard. So it's a little bit of information for you. Alright, that's it for this video. I've only got a little bit left to do, not too much. I don't know what I've recorded or how long this thing's gonna be, but this is just kind of the finishing up, getting whatever sorted out on this thing. I've also got to make a cool or cowl hood to go on it. So that'll be the next video, probably doing the hood. I might
I might not post that one. I might just move on to another project because this thing's running, driving, pretty much done. I do have an engine vibration that I've got to fix though. I believe the balancer's bad on it. I'm really hoping that's what's it. Because the only other thing that could make it vibrate like it does is the flywheel, which I got the correct one for this year of an engine for a 302. So that the flywheel should be correct. So hopefully that's right. But got to get that balancer on, fix my hood up, make it look nice, and that's pretty much it for the Jeep project. I need to do a little bit of driving stuff on it, just see how it does, do my little review after I've driven it for a while and see what I think. But that's it for now. If you want to see another video on this thing, make sure you leave a comment. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.